Hello, Internet. And welcome to day one of our wonderful Women's Week of Wonderment. Now, before we can talk about feminism today, we need to understand what is feminism. The Merriam-Webster definition of feminism is the theory of political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. The term was initially coined in France in the 1800s, but the idea has been around since the beginning of the Western world. However, in the US, we really didn't see feminism come in until the late 19th century. The history of feminism can be broken into three parts. First wave, second wave, third wave. First wave feminism was a period from the mid-1800s all the way to the 1920s. First wave feminists fought primarily for equal education opportunities, employment and marriage laws to level the playing field for women, and, of course, the right to vote. Before this, women, even teachers, didn't have access to higher education, didn't own their own property, couldn't attain the job opportunities and wages that men could, and, yes, couldn't vote. Then the Reconstruction Acts of 1867 and 1868 were passed, and black men in America were finally able to vote. Except then white women were like, wait a minute, less than 5 years ago, black men were slaves, and now they can vote, and we can't. Yeah, no, we gotta stop this. That's when the ball really got rolling. One notable feminist was Susan B. Anthony, famous activist, and the only person you can say is actually worth 50 cents. She was the founder of the National Women's Suffrage Association, and was famously arrested for voting in the 1872 elections. She was convicted and fined, but like a badass, she didn't pay the fine. And the US government realized she was a badass, so they didn't ask her for one. Another was Lucy Stone, anti-slavery and women's activist, and founder of the American Women's Suffrage Association. Yes, they are different, and yes, it's a lot like the NFL and the AFL. And like America's favorite sports league, they eventually merged into the National American Women's Suffrage Association, also known as the very attractive sounding acronym NAWSA. NAWSA. Through protest and legislative action, by the 1920s, not only was secondary education opened up to women, but wives were no longer legally subordinate to their husbands. And the grandmommy of them all, on June 4th, 1919, the 19th Amendment was passed, finally giving women the right to vote. Woo! Now, the first wave was huge, but it was very basic. First wave feminists really only cared about middle-class white women. They weren't too concerned with the working class, an ideal that would be overturned going into the second wave. Fast forward to the 1960s. The anti-war and civil rights campaign was taking off, and the feminist movement was taking off with them. They primarily fought against discrimination, especially in the workplace. Like I said, unlike the first wave, they were much more concerned with the working class. They fought for equal pay, they fought to end discrimination in the workplace, and this was also the time where the slogan "personal is political" was coined. This was to show that feminists were not just about political reform, but also about social and economic reform, or personal reform. The problem with this movement is that it wasn't very focused. There was black feminism, there was lesbian feminism, there was social feminism, there was a lot of isms. A good parallel to think of is the Occupy movement today. This movement more or less continued into the 1990s, when we began to move into the third wave of feminism, which, unless some historians 100 years from now say otherwise, we are still currently in. This wave was first identified by Rebecca Walker, fun fact, daughter of author Alice Walker, in her article, "I Am the Third Wave." This current wave is on a much more global scale, concerning itself with more global issues in other countries. Issues that we will be discussing on Wednesday. One last thing before I go. It's important to know what feminism is, but it's equally as important to know what feminism isn't. Linking it with a term called misandrism, which is a hatred for all things male. This is completely untrue. Feminists are striving for universal equality, and want to abolish gender stereotypes for both sexes. Just like women, men are typecast in the mainstream media as well, into roles of macho heroism, and we want it all abolished. And we hope that you will join us in this battle. Alright YouTube, I tried to make the learning as painless as possible, and you did great. Or you didn't. Either way, your reward is a music video tomorrow. Until then, I've got to go edit this bad boy and then freak out about end of the year projects. So, Toby, out. Jordan, out.